Hey guys, my name is Rita COF and I want to talk to you guys about pesticide use. So my major claim is that pesticides damage agriculture, land by killing insects, animals, humans, and it's destroying our ecosystem. So my first is pesticides damage agriculture land by killing insects and animals. Approximately 90% of all flowering plants require pollination to survive. We're killing off all of our bees. Yes? So agriculture, nearly a third of pollination is accomplished by honeybees. Beekeepers are really struggling to keep their bees alive. Every time they leave to go and pollinate, they don't return because the herbicides that are used to kill off dozens of plants are killing off all of our insects, ladybugs, praying mantis, but honeybees are especially crucial. And the reason why is all of our crops depend on them. California alone is going to lose approximately $1.5 million because we have to get out of bee from other states to come to California. We supply 60% of the world's almonds, and we're going to lose all of our almond crops if we're not able to have enough honeybees to pollinate them properly. Not only do we pollinate our almond crops, but we pollinate watermelon, apples, cranberries, and the such. Another problem that we have, salud, is fish. We're losing all of our fish in the water due to runoff from pollutants that are on our land. They go into all of our streams and they go into all our aquifers, which is where we drink our water. So my second claim is that it reduces our drinking water supply. So first, it kills off our animals, our honeybees. Second, it reduces all of our drinking water supply. In 2002, each U.S. household used an average of 94,000 gallons of water per year. Some 55% of that water comes from reservoirs, rivers, and lakes. A 2000 survey published in EPA's National Water Quality Inventory found that almost 40% of U.S. rivers and 45% of lakes are polluted. With what? Pesticides. About 40% of U.S. municipal water comes from groundwater, and an additional 40 million people, including the most of the rural population, draw drinking water from domestic wells. The U.S. Geological Survey monitors ground and surface water. 76 pesticides and 7 pesticides breakdown products. They found that 90% of streams and 50% of wells are all tested positive for such harmful pesticides. Ingestion of pesticides are the most common form of poisoning for humans, quoted from the Poison Control. We get it via our food and our drinking water. With 90% of our streams and 50% of wells testing positive, we're all getting poisoned. How dangerous is this? Well, first, the consumption of fish and shellfish are contaminated by pesticides. We eat them. We drink our polluted water. And what happens? We have a 65% rate of poisoning, most of them in children. My second claim, or my third, is that pesticides is dangerous to the farm workers. Increasing use of pesticides in the country's agriculture has invoked a widespread concern among specialists. A recent study in farm workers in Bangladesh found that 90% of all the workers had some kind of poisoning effects. Approximately 60% were suffering from skin diseases, irritation, itching. 63 reported having eye problems, some of them permanent. According to Professor Dr. A.M.M. Sarifum Alam, former director of the National Cancer and Research Institute and Hospital, quoted, "Pesticide is a type of poison and plays a significant role to develop cancer in the human body. if it enters into the body through nose, mouth, ear, and eye. With 98% of our farm workers suffering from such things, the cancer rate has increased. A study in California, which hits a little closer to home, involved active surveillance with extensive physician education and recruitment. It revealed that 40% of exposure incidents involved coworkers who did not seek medical treatment for various reasons, suggesting that the total burden of illness is grossly underreported. Dr. Lynn Goldman, Assistant Administrator of the Office of Prevention of Pesticides and Toxic Substances of the U.S., has publicly admitted medical problems caused by pesticide exposure are often overlooked and underdiagnosed. I end with, current worldwide use of pesticide is damaging the ecosystem, destroying the planet, our food supply, and our quality of life. Thank you.
All right, Rita, the proposition is stated, but it sounds kind of convoluted because it includes what appears to be the preview of the supporting structure in the proposition. So they're not really distinct issues then, and that I thought was a little bit confusing. However, that does mean that there is kind of a preview, but because it's in the same proposition, those secondary points are not really stated as claims. I just know what the topic areas are that you're going to be talking about. And I think the argument would be clearer if you had declarative sentences for those particular points. And so that, like I said, seems a bit problematic. It was, however, structured in the body of the speech because you did have classifications of categories as you were talking about those kinds of things. There were some things, however, that you had some generalizations on that I think need a little bit more proof. The whole issue of the bees, for instance, dying off because of pesticides, I didn't hear any data that said that there's a die-off of bees because of pesticides. I didn't even hear any evidence that there's a die-off of bees. Now, I've heard of that kind of thing, but attributing it to the use of pesticides, you need some... I'm sure there's an authority who believes that. I'm sure there's some research that you've got there, but you didn't say who it is or what it is, and it just sounds like a claim that you're making. If it's an authority, at least then we know what the basis of that inference is, and we could judge whether or not that is enough to believe it on that. The second point got a little confusing because at first it starts off like it's sounding like you're talking about death to the fish. Then it turns out it's really a contamination of drinking water. So you've kind of conflated those two things, and that needs to be a little bit more distinct when you're making your transition. I did think that you had good information about the risks of pesticides in a variety of places, the amount of water that is contaminated with pesticides. There was a little bit of confusion on some statistics that was awkward. You had one place where I can't quite remember what the number was. It was like 7 and then 70% or something like that, right next to each other. And I was trying to figure out, well, those two figures seem almost contradictory to each other. So what does this statistic mean? I couldn't quite tell what it was representing. And then later on, you had this stuff that says there's a 65% of rate of poisoning in children. Well, that means 2 out of every 3 kids that is around is poisoned. And I'm going, that doesn't seem on its face to be accurate. Now, maybe everybody's contaminated to some degree, and there may be a risk that goes along with that. you need to explain that a lot more clearly, because that statistic just said, 2 out of 3 kids is poisoned, and I'm going, well, how come they're not dropping dead right in front of me? There are still a lot of kids at the school that my wife teaches at. How come, at the end of the day, she doesn't send home 2 fewer each day? I'm not exactly sure what that statistic means. So I know you got the statistic someplace, and I know it refers to something, but it's not clear what it refers to when you're presenting the argument. And so it feels like it's a piece of information that is incomplete. And there are a couple of places where you have those sorts of issues. I thought you did a nice job speaking to the audience. You did cite sources pretty consistently. I think if you've got the data to build the argument pretty effectively, it needs a little bit more retooling to make sure that the secondary issues are distinct and we can see what the evidence means, but you've got the basics here. It just, like I said, it's not fitting together quite the way you want it to. I know the argument that you're making. I can see that there are issues that we're faced with, but some of the information just kind of floats together, and I'm not exactly sure what the long-term inference is on a couple of points. So I think that that's a little bit problematic. All right, like I said, I thought the summary also was pretty solid, because it does remind us that's what the structure was. I thought the summary gave us a better clarification of what the argument was than what you had at the beginning of the speech. All right, thank you.